Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. South Africa has some of the worst cases of gender-based violence against women and children in the world. Many women and girls are murdered at the hands of their partners. Names like Uyinene Mrwetyana, Tshegofatso Pule come to mind when GBV is mentioned. Now, last month, Police Minister Bheki Cele released the latest quarterly crime statistics to July to September. And they reveal, amongst other things, that 9,556 people, mostly women, were raped. This is an increase of over 7% on the previous reporting period. The stats further show that the almost 73,000 assault cases reported in the same period, more than 13,000 were domestic violence related. Child murders have increased by nearly a third compared to the previous reporting period. And in his weekly Monday newsletter, President Ramaphosa urged men to play a more active role in curbing gender-based violence. Now, to take a look at the year that's been in the fight against gender-based violence, we're now joined by Lebogang Motau, who's a founder and CEO of Free World Initiative. Now, this is an NPO that works together with communities to raise responsible men in the hopes of eradicating gender-based violence. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us.
Do you ever feel sometimes that you're swimming against a very strong tide as you try and navigate these waters, that it just seems to be getting a stronger current against you?
You know, Peter, as I was hearing you read all that, as much as this is my day-to-day, it still gives me chills, you know. It is so sad that South Africa is the rape capital of the world, according to Interpol. It is so sad that South Africa is one of the fifth most dangerous places for women to live. It is so sad that, you know, as much as we can give out all these numbers, it seems like each day it's just getting worse and nothing is changing. And as much as this is what I do every single day of my life, it still gives me chills that, like we say, where are we safe? It feels like we're not safe anywhere. As long as you're a woman in South Africa, you have a target on you.
So you've been at this a while now, so you've started to get an understanding perhaps of the psychology and some of the reasons that we have such a big problem. What have you found?
You know, I think the first thing that South African men, and actually the world, because this is not an issue that's only happening in South Africa. In South Africa, we do find that every 3 hours a woman is killed. So there's 7 women a day that are killed, but this is a global issue. Gender-based violence and femicide is a global issue. Rape is a global issue. In South Africa, we say 1 in 4 women is going to be raped in their lifetime, and in the world, it's 1 in 3. So just to highlight that this is not me just saying South African men, but this is me saying the men in the world. The biggest issue is the fact that we put the responsibility solely on a woman to keep herself safe, to keep herself from being raped. When I say that, I mean that we tell women what to wear, where to go, how to act, but we never tell a man, do not rape. We do not tell a man, do not hit a woman, you know. Even once reporting your cases, we find the exact same thing, that a rape victim will be asked, but where were you? What were you wearing? So always the responsibility is taken away from the man to act correctly and put on a woman to try and keep herself safe from somebody who has more power than she does. And that is the most prominent thing, this issue of a power, a man trying to show his dominance over a woman, and it's done through some sort of violence.
Yeah, I noticed quite a big campaign with UN Women where they were saying, let's change the narrative because as you've been describing, a lot of the time it really has been about the victim more than the perpetrator.
Yes.
How do you think society, I don't know, maybe journalists, the way we tell stories, that we say a woman was raped instead of a man raped a woman yesterday,
Yes.
films that we see, is that part of contributing to this narrative?
It definitely is. Media has romanticized rape. It starts as early as when we're watching our movies or our soapies. We find that man who has to convince a woman to become sexual with him. We see that man who comes in for a kiss and the woman says no, and he keeps insisting, and it turns into a passionate kiss. That in itself is rape. So the definition of rape needs to be explained a bit better. So anything that is done without consent of a woman, and consent means it's given freely, it's given excitedly. If you have to convince somebody to have sex with you, or have to convince somebody to be affectionate with you, that is already a basis for sex. It can be removed at any time. So understanding that just because I said yes at the beginning, it does not mean I cannot. Just because I said yes on the first round does not mean it is yes for the third round. Just because we are married or in a relationship does not automatically give you consent. Also understanding that consent, like I said, it can be revoked, but also the ages and who can consent. A child cannot consent. We are currently seeing a spike in so-called teen pregnancies, and mostly in the age group of 10 to 12. That is not teen pregnancy, that is a rape. And we are not talking about it in the correct way. As long as we keep talking about the statistics of teen pregnancy, we are not highlighting the issue that we've got a huge problem with rape. Consent can only be given by somebody who is of sound mind, which means if you're intoxicated, you cannot give consent. If you've got any form of mental disabilities, you cannot give consent. If you are under the influence, you cannot give consent. If you're underage, you cannot give consent. So when we think about all of these aspects of what consent is, which means any sexual act that is performed on somebody using your penis or any other object inserted in any of the female's holes, that is rape without consent. So when we have a clear understanding of what rape is, what consent is, we start understanding how big the problem of rape actually is in South Africa.
Tell me, from the work that you do and some of the initiatives that you've been able to enact, what sort of things are starting to work, that are starting to make a difference?
We keep knocking on doors, and the biggest one that we are trying to do is that we are, as much as we do provide victim support, we are there for our victims, we offer counseling for our victims, and we do a lot of work within communities in terms of education. The biggest one that we are driving is pulling men into the fight. So what you said at the beginning, that Ramaphosa has called on men, that's the only way things are going to change, because it's not women who are raping women, it's not women who are hitting women. Not to say that men are not abused. I just need to say this, men are abused. The whole concept of gender-based violence is the fact that somebody who has dominance and somebody who's more masculine is violent towards somebody who's more feminine. So let me just say that before I get people jumping on me, that men are also abused. Men are also facing abuse, but the biggest bulk of the problem is towards women. If we are bringing men in, not just as champions, I often get very frustrated when I find that somebody who raped somebody and now suddenly is getting paid to be a champion, but is only going to events if they get paid. And my understanding of a champion is somebody who's willing to go out and use their voice to change people's lives. So one of the things we are doing as FWI is calling upon men. We are calling on men in all the activities that we do. We want them to be involved in everything that we do. We want their voices, because as much as as men, we keep hearing that not all men are trash. As long as men keep quiet, as long as, 1 in 9 rapes are reported, but 1 in 4 women will experience rape in their lifetime, but no man knows a rapist. As long as men keep saying they don't know rapists, as long as we've got victim shaming or victim blaming, which is also a huge problem in South Africa and in the world. We're always asking the victim, but what did you do? As long as men carry on with this boys' club of protecting the perpetrator, we're not going anywhere. So FWI has taken a stand and said, yes, we do need to work with victims. Yes, we do provide support for victims, but we need to educate men about the toxic masculinity that has become the norm, especially in a country like ours that is the capital of rape in the world.
When I look at our continent and our cultures, we're very patriarchal. And also, I do get a sense sometimes that we also perhaps couch things for women so that they assume a certain role, like the education that a young bride gets about how to please her man in marriage. And I wonder if we need to change all of that, the psyche, because a man might not think that what he's doing is wrong, genuinely.
What you're saying is absolutely correct. The re-education needs to start as early as preschool, when we're telling young girls that the boy that is teasing her is because he likes you. So from that age, we're already socializing our young girls into thinking that a form of abuse is actually showing you that they love you. That's a form of affection. So it starts from that early. We're not even waiting for marriage. By the time as women be getting married, we've already been socialized into believing that this man who is ignoring us, no, it means that he likes you. That's why he ignores you. You know, there's so many games around dating and courting that by the time we get married, it's already a toxic foundation. And then I know I went through this as well. The day of your marriage, the elderly women will sit down with a young woman and let her know that you never deny your husband sex. You never turn him back no matter what time he gets home. All these things are taught to you. Your mother-in-law, you love your mother-in-law no matter what. And that is what opens up a young woman to so much abuse from the family and from this man. So the re-education does start from a younger age. It starts with our mothers as well, to re-educate our mothers into not teaching a young woman. In Zulu, they say, you must hold on. No matter what is going on, you hold on to that marriage. Some cultures, they even give you a kiss as you get married, because that's a sign that the only way you're going to leave your marital home is in a box. And this normally for us women means our coffin, and not because of natural death. Back in the days it was due to natural death, but these days it is due to you stay in that marriage where you're being abused. You hold on. In other languages they say a woman holds a knife with her hands. And it's this type of socializing that keeps women in these abusive relationships, that keeps women unable to go home and tell the parents that I am being abused in this relationship. And it just keeps that cycle going, because this man thinks he does have a right to do this, because he's also being told this is your woman. We also finding that, and I'm not saying lobola is wrong. I'm saying that due to what modern day has twisted lobola into something dirty, into a man thinking that now he's got ownership of a woman, so he can do with this woman as he pleases. Another form that education, we have to re-educate. So there are different aspects of re-education so that we can help a man and a woman to live in a household in peace and harmony and grow up and love each other. Back to the media, the media, what is portraying as love and romantic relationship, for us as Africans is often unrealistic and intangible, which causes a lot of frustration within the household. And that too in itself can lead to more abuse happening, because there's these two people who are trying to live up to something that has been put up on the TV and they can't. Therefore, abuse starts happening, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, and physical as well as sexual abuse start happening within the home.
Yeah, you've touched on something else as well. Mental health is only something that has been talked about more and more, I would say, in recent decades. And I just wonder if non-physical abuse is given the same or enough prominence, because that often is actually more dangerous.
Yeah. I had to take a sigh, because for the longest time, I didn't even talk about, I'm divorced now 6 years, and I never spoke about the abuse that I experienced, because it didn't click as abuse, because so often we talk about the physical abuse and we don't give enough attention to to the controllingness, which is abuse, going through your phone, which is abuse, telling you who you can talk to, and the separating from friends and family. These are all types of abuses. The threats, we often live under duress as women, that we are terrified of the partners that we live with. But it hasn't clicked to us that this is actually a form of abuse. So often women stay in these type of relationships, not even realizing that this is abuse. The fact that a man who will control all the finances in the home, you have to ask for everything, including a sanitary towel as a woman. This is a form of abuse, and all of these types of abuse are not being discussed. Therefore, women are staying with it. And as you're saying, that has got longer lasting effects than a slap. That mental and emotional breakdown that women are going through within their relationships causes years of trauma and inability to trust others, and inability to form relationships even after you've left that situation. So it is something that needs to be discussed more broadly in terms of the victim, but also in terms of a perpetrator. I think the recent happenings are showing that our perpetrators are not well. For somebody to be able to chop somebody up, shove them under their bed, and stay with that corpse for days, that shows that these people are not mentally stable, and we're not looking into that. So a lot of work needs to be done in terms of mental health awareness, and also working towards mental stability and destigmatizing things like therapy, especially within Black communities.
I had a conversation the other day about the activities around trying to deal with gender-based violence. Every year we have 16 days of activism and other campaigns, and a question was raised, do we need to rethink some of these? Because it can get to a point where it's just something that's talked about and people get fatigued hearing about it, and then they stop doing things. Do you think we need to rethink the way we fight this fight?
First off, I think in a country like ours, there's no way we can box it into 16 days. That's actually mocking us women who are survivors or who are dealing with GBV on a day-to-day basis, to give 16 days only to the worst pandemic that the world is facing. More women are killed in abusive relationships. More women are raped than any other disease that we give so much more attention to, including corona. We had to say that the real pandemic is GBV, and not enough is being done. So 16 days, it is something that it was just a way of highlighting the fact that there is an issue, but we do need to be working on this 365 days. But like you're saying, we do get annoyed, irritated, and fatigued at these events that seem that it's just to spend money. The real work needs to happen every day on the ground. And also, studies have shown that the more we empower women, the more emasculated that men feel, and that is when there is a spike in GBV. So during those periods of 16 days of activism, there is a spike in GBV. During Women's Month, there is a spike in GBV. So it is one of those, it's a double-edged sword, that as much as we're trying to empower our victims and help them out, it's actually making these men feel this need to dominate more, and it is spiking up the cases during those times.
Lebogang, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for your time, and we should have these conversations more often. Thank you.
Yes, please, definitely. And thank you so much for joining in on this conversation, because it's through men talking about it that we are going to be able to cause some sort of a change.
Thanks very much indeed, Lebogang.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right, so that's Lebogang Motau, who's the CEO of Free World Initiative, working very hard to try and get to grips with gender-based violence, raising responsible men with the help of communities.